Okay.
Excellent. So it's great to see all of you. We are devoting this session of Psalms to the very, very, very famous Psalm 23. I wanted to say that it's paradoxical that this psalm is understood differently by different people and different communities, and because of the emphasis that is being given to it's placed in the liturgy at different times. But before that happens, I am going to show you the text, and I'm going to play for you a version of this psalm in the tone of Yossi Banai. I wanted to hear the Hebrew beautifully expressed, and for that I am going to share the screen and share the sound. And here is that. I think you, as always, please let me know that you can see it. And here is how he recites Psalm 23.
אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בנאות דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינהלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. דישנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
So good. So this is Yossi Banai, a very, very good Israeli singer. So as we are looking into this, the first impression that I get is that this is a psalm that David writes, and he says the words, Adonai ro'i lo echzar, Adonai is my shepherd. It's very interesting because the original, the version that you probably, many of you have, how many of you have actually recited Psalm 23 in school? Did they ask you to? Some people have told me that in some curriculum, people were to recite it every week or everything. Did you?
No.
No, you didn't. Rick says yes. Yes. So so one of the things that happens of the King James Version is that it says that Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. And that was something that always made me a little bit confused, because I shall not want, that's not what the Hebrew says. Lo exar means that I lack nothing. And then I learned that in Old English, I shall not want means I lack nothing. Or so you speak English better than me. You may corroborate this, but in any case, this is what it means, that I lack nothing. And why is that so important? Because one thing is, Jews want things. We do want things. We want peace. We want sustenance. We want love. We want connection. We want a lot of things. And we think we deserve them. So the idea in here is that I lack nothing, right? Now, here maybe I'll have a conversation with Richard. Richard, put you on the spot. When do you normally recite Psalm 23?
I recite it if there's an unveiling or a funeral.
Isn't that interesting what Richard is saying? That he recites it, he's not alone. He's following the Ashkenazi custom of when is it that is, I'm going to add, I'm sure he will agree with me, it's also for his score that we recited, whether is for any of the 4 times that Ashkenazi Jews have his score at services, right? And that is Psalm 23. So I ask myself, why would that be? Why would that be? Because I lack nothing. So why would I be connecting this psalm to God makes me lie down in green pastures? Isn't that a beautiful thing? What does it mean that I have to connect with funerals, with unveilings, with discord, with moments of terrible sadness, when the song says, leads me beside still waters, restores my soul? And then it comes and it hits me why Ashkenazi Jewry actually includes this at times of great sadness. Gam ki elech begeit tzalmavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Here it comes. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for sure you are with me. This is a moment of great poignancy, right? This idea that when I walk at that terrible time, I fear nothing bad would happen to me. Why? Because you are with me, because you with a capital Y, right? Because you are with me. So it reminds us of what? Of the ending of that famous Adon Olam, right? That it says the same thing, right? That the idea is that even when I'm coming down in my life, I fear not because you are with me. The same idea you could now, when you sing at the very end of Shabbat morning services, probably Adon Olam, you'll please pay attention to those words at the end of it. So this is the version. Now, when I grew up as a Sephardic Jew, we recited Psalm 23 every Shabbat. In fact, not only every Shabbat, is actually the introduction to the Kiddush for Shabbat morning. That connected to the warmth of Shabbat. So where is that Sephardic and Ashkenazi and Oriental Jews to be called that way? Why is that they have this practice of reciting Psalm 23 not at sad moments, but dafka at happy moments? Isn't Shabbat the greatest, the most happy day, other of course than Purim, right? So it's so happy. And when we say it, so part of that is when it says, Lo Adonai Roi lo echsar, Adonai my shepherd, I lack nothing. When is the day when we lack nothing? Shabbat. This is the day that we lack nothing. But then we move on. And immediately after, when we say, Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan, you prepare a table before me, and then we go and you say, Dishanta b'shemen roshi, you anoint my head with oil. And now the key words, Kosi revaya, my cup overflows. I'm going to stop for a second right here. I want to ask you, what does it mean that my cup overflows? Does it mean that there's been a big, like with Noah, like a big flood, and
No.
or somebody had a hand trembling and couldn't stop pouring, and therefore it overflows? I know that you know that this is not
Your heart is overflowing with happiness.
Yes. So when is it that we actually have kiddush, kosi, my cup, right? And therefore now we understand why this is associated with actually kiddush. Why is it that when do we recite kiddush? Of course, on Shabbat. In fact, we go, Rambam, the famous Maimonides, says, when does it Shabbat begin and when does it end? And Rambam answers, Mikiddush lekiddush. From the kiddush of Friday night to which other kiddush?
Havdalah.
Exactly. Thank you, Richard, for reminding me. Yes, that is the moment that encapsulates Shabbat. From one kiddush to the next. When is it that we associate kiddush then? Of course, for holidays, of moments of great happiness. That's the sign. If you like, I don't know if you like wine, you don't like wine, but there are two elements. One of them I like, and the other one, as an Argentinian, I love, is that one is wine, and the other one for happiness is meat. According to Judaism, or to the rabbis, to the sages, the greatest moments, in fact, what you needed to do, even if you were poor, you would save. So for Shabbat, you could have meat. And in fact, you know the famous meal on Shabbat called cholent. The Sephardic Jews have something similar to that, adafina. But the whole concept is that you actually cook something that lasts for the entire Shabbat, because we are not cooking on Shabbat. So therefore, it becomes this amazing thing, right? And what's that amazing thing? Meat. After saying that, before Christina gets horrified for my publicity of meat, I'm going to say that that I eat less meat all the time. All the time. Why? Because, of course, of enormous ecological issues and for other reasons, like shechita, the issue of how do you actually have to kill a cow, or right? And the whole idea of suffering, the animal suffering, and etc., etc. We actually, by just as a little aside, we have now today something called eco-kashrut. Eco-kashrut meaning it's not only kasher or kosher to actually kill the animal in the right way, but also make sure that all the workers and all the sanitary conditions are such that this feels uplifting as well. In other words, if you are having workers that get paid nothing, that's not kasher according to eco-kashrut. According to the halacha, to the Jewish law, is perfectly fine. But according to eco-kashrut, we go a little bit farther. We make sure that, right? But going back to Psalm 23, now you begin to understand this idea of kosir revaya, the moment when we actually talk this idea that my cup is overflowing, right? So my cup is overflowing. So you begin to get this idea that that there are different ways of emphasis. Where is the emphasis of the song? It can be, as we said, the idea of sadness, of death, walking on the shadow of death, or actually of happiness, of an overflow cup. So you can look at it differently. We also learned about Adonai Ro'i, of God is my shepherd. So when we talk about a shepherd, of course, who was a shepherd himself?
David.
Exactly. So he was a shepherd. And we have many, many cases in Judaism where actually the greatest leaders of Israel were shepherds themselves. Think of Moshe, of Moses. Think of several of our prophets. Why would that be? Why would that be not a condition to be a leader? But why is this such an important attribute that a leader should be a shepherd? Any thoughts?
I mean, because he has to take care of those who he's leading.
Yeah, he takes care of each one of them. And if you're able to make sure that a sheep, here is Christina inspiring me, if a sheep gets behind, what do, Christina?
You go get it.
Yes, you go get it, and you make sure that it's in good shape and in good health. You go get it. And this is one of the reasons, by the way, that the Israeli IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, it's a fact that you would not leave anyone behind. You don't leave anyone behind. And this is why when terrorists take soldiers captives, they make sure that the ransom is very, very high, because Israel would not allow, God forbid, one soul to be left behind if they could prevent it, right? So Adonai Ro'i, God is my shepherd, meaning what? If you remember, all of you were at the high holidays with me, and we had this prayer called Untanet Tokef, where actually, what is that God is doing? God is counting each of us and making sure that that we are in the right path, and that God cares for each of us. When we count, it's because we care. When we don't count, we don't care. Think about it, for instance, for the minyan, that we count because each one of us is actually totally sacred and precious. Kindness, attention for each person one leads. That's leadership, right? I'm going to do something a little bit different this time before we go on. I'm going to share the screen for you, and I'm going to share the sound. I'm going to bring you the same text. This is going to be another version of Psalm 23 by Franz Schubert, the famous musician, the great German composer. He wrote a whole version of this for women's voices. And I'm not going to put a translation for it, because the translation is right here of the German. But I'm going to talk to you about it for a little bit and see where is the emphasis for him. So, I hope you were able to hear this. What, say you don't, Psalm 23, you know the words. Is this the feeling you think this psalm has? What do you think?
Yeah,
Or
that,
in other
that was
words,
very like joyful, jubilant, and not so somber, you know.
very good. And I'm glad, Christina, that you actually talk about it, because in the romantic times and music in particular, and we're talking about the late 19th century, the idea is to glorify nature. To glorify nature. And what do they do? What's God? God is the God of nature. So what are the parts? I'm going to share the screen one more time. I like to see you better than the score or the page. But notice all the things that he loves. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, restores my soul, walk through the valley of the shadow of death for a little bit, right? Then prepare a table before me, anoint my head with oil, and then I will dwell in the house of God for the extension of my days, or rather, for the eternity, right? And if you heard this big crescendo at the end and a long phrase just to remind you exactly of that what is long? Long is very long. How long? Until God decides. So here the concept is completely different, right? Here, the idea is a God of nature, as pastures and when waters and all kinds of things, completely, in a sense, almost where God is so immersed in nature that nature is what matters, and that's where he's going. And that's also why, if you notice, the fact that the voices are ethereal, the voices are like angels, are they? This idea that it has nothing to do, not with terrible circumstances and not with connection to a deep God that reminds us every seventh day of the purpose that we have in life. This idea that keeps resonating, not for Schubert. For him, there's something completely different that he wants to portray. And so we go, we look into this psalm with different eyes, isn't it? All of a sudden now this doesn't seem to be what we thought it was, and that's part of the beauty of it. And let me share the screen and the text one more time and keep looking at some of the things that are so impressive about it. So one of the things that says, your rod and your staff comfort me. Shiftecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. They provide me nechama, comfort. So what's the idea? What is it for you, a rod and a staff? I'll stop for a second so I can see you.
It's kind of hearkening back to the shepherd metaphor, because the shepherd always has his staff and he uses it to, guide the sheep, grab a sheep, protect the sheep. So I think of it as a protective tool, weapon, whatever is needed.
Right. And this idea of being a shepherd and being connected again to those creatures that you protect is actually good. And yet there is more to it, isn't it? Because why would that comfort you?
It seems to me like it's guidance, you know,
Say more.
uh, that God wants you to guide yourself and to be strong and to help. And so does my cat.
Yes, very good. That it just came like if you planned it, it would have not worked that well, right? That's good.
Yes,
That's very
the
good.
nature. Here's our nature.
Right. So it's interesting. This is what I was thinking when I was preparing this class. I thought that the rod and the staff give us stability. We don't fall when we are holding them. It gives us the sense that we are balanced, that somehow when we have all these different things, and please remember King David was at war all the time, right? Of this little group tribe of Judah, right? And that they were going and actually is because of that tribe of Judah, Yehuda, that we become Jews. None of the 10 tribes, right, that they call the northern tribes that disappeared. Some people claim to know where they are, but no one seems to know for a fact. But only because of the two that remain. Again, the one that may have been dispossessed, the small ones, the Judah and Binyamin, the ones that, right? And he is from that. And that is what we become in history, Jews, Yehudim, right? And then he says, your staff and your rod comfort me, meaning when I feel in distress, they bring me and remind me, right? The famous Talmudic saying of the rabbis that says, we come to the world with one piece of paper that says, we come from the ashes. And the other one, in case that you become depressed, because you think that we actually come from the ashes and return to the ashes, we are created in God's image. And therefore, we are unique, we are precious, we are sacred, we are potentially a light, channeling the divine into the world. Every one of us can actually have the potential to do that, right? So here we have the two, you can put it in your pockets, if you don't have pockets, in your purse, whatever it is, and just remind yourself, when you feel that you are the greatest, from the ashes we come, from the ashes we will return. When you feel that everything goes wrong, we are created in God's image. When people tell you that you can't sing, you tell them, what are you saying? That God has created me imperfect? No, God forbid, God forbid that we will diminish God's presence in the world. So every one of our voices is a voice for truth, for love. I have to also say, I'm sure you all know, this Tuesday here in DC, we're having, hopefully many of you coming over from all parts of the country to bring our voices together, right? Voices together against anti-Semitism, against those that claim that the Israel is an evil state, etc., etc. So we bring our voices together. So that was one of the comments of the psalm. I wanted to point out to another thing that might be also so meaningful to you. Let me see if I can bring it back. Where are you? Let's see. Can you see it again? Can you see the text? Good. So another thing that
Yes.
says, thank you so much. So this is also intriguing. You anoint my head with oil. Dishanta bashemen roshi. We've seen a little bit of this in Psalm 30, but I want to come back to it. What does it mean? You anoint my head with oil. Is that weird? Is that God? What is God doing? Throwing oil on me? Is that a nice thing?
Making you a leader.
Correct. Kings were actually anointed with oil, with, I would say, some of the best oil in the world, because of course in both in Israel and Palestinians grow amazing, right, olives and olive trees, and therefore the oil that comes from those olives is so pure that that was a sign of greatness. And if you recall, we saw that when our first session, when we talked about Psalm 133, right, when we were talking of Hine Matov, how good it is to be together, right, as one. And that we talked, the third of the verses mentioned the fact that Aaron was actually crowned by being anointed with oil. I mean, the priest, the high priest. In this case, is King David, who's going to be the second king of Israel. That's why he says, you anoint, or you anointed me, or my head, rather. And Rosh, by the way, Rosh in Hebrew means head, but it also means leader, right? So the prime minister is called Rosh HaMemshala, the leader, the head, right, of the government. And then it says something so important. It says, Ach, tov v'chesed yirdefuni. Surely goodness and loving kindness would follow me. Yirdefuni will follow me. Why is it? Why is surely? Because what is he's asking is for the inspiration as a leader to do what?
To inspire those who you're leading.
You got it. Yes, Richard, exactly right. And what is that he wants to inspire them with? With two things, with good
And love.
kindness. And
Kindness.
why is that? Because sometimes good is brutal. We want the good for somebody, but we don't understand that kindness needs to come with it. And that is one of the main issues we have in our civilization, in our days, where people say, I'm telling you what's good for you. Sometimes we have that, I don't know, I'm saying my mother, Aliyah Shalom, may she rest in peace. When she wants, this is good for you. You have to do it. She would chastise me and say, that is, you're not doing the right thing. Did she mean well? Yes. Sometimes kindness needs to come with it. I understand how difficult it is for you to take the right path, right? This idea of goodness, but also of compassion, of kindness, should be coming with our actions, right? And how long? Kol yemei chayai, for all the days of my life, all the days of my life. And then, what is his desire? What is that he wants the most? When I ask you, what do you want? You may tell me, I want to have a beautiful house. I want to have an electric car. I want to have, I don't know, a lot of food in my refrigerator, so it never, this is also very common for Shoah, for Holocaust survivors, that they always feel that because they were so needy that they didn't have anything to eat from the rest of their lives, they have to guarantee that there is food, lots of it, right? So that is sometimes what's good. For King David, Beshavti bebet Adonai, and I want to dwell in the house of God. Now, where is the house of God, everybody?
It's everywhere.
That's right. It's everywhere we are, everywhere you are, everywhere I am. That's the house of God. Potentially, it can be. So what do I say by that? Is if you remember the words in the book of Exodus, okay, where God says that you're going to build a tabernacle, right? And he says, God says, she says, Veshachanti betocham, and I will dwell, but listen to this, I will them in them. Isn't that odd? Talking about a mishkan, a sanctuary. Isn't it in it? Why in them? There were not many sanctuaries. Why is that God is going to dwell in them? Any thoughts?
That's where people will come to join with God, to pray to God in a sanctuary.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I want to propose another possibility, is that God will be with those that created that tabernacle, that created that place of sacredness. And guess, in case that you think, oh, but I don't have a synagogue. You have an amazing synagogue, but that is not even what we're talking about.
Oh, David wanted to build the temple, but it was given to Solomon to do.
That's right. So you remember from last week, even though you could not come, that you remember that was what he built. Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit, the dedication of the house. Now, here is the story, that a house, your house, my house, is called Mishkan Me'at. A tabernacle, a synagogue in prototype, in small. But that is, every house that we have can become potentially a place of great sacredness. Is the house sacred? Is the land sacred? The answer is no. The house is not officially sacred. When is it sacred? When we bring the signs that bring sacredness to it, whether we put a mezuzah at the doorposts every time, what do we do? We actually touch it and kiss it. Why is that? Because the parchment inside of it has the name of God in it. And it has the words, V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, and you would love God b'chol levavcha, with all your heart, b'chol nafshecha, with all your soul, u'b'chol meodecha, with all your might, we answer. But then Rashi, the great commentator, says, what does might mean? Your money. That's what it means. To put our foundation, our money on this, on the important matters of what really matters. To make sure that education is a pillar. To make sure that people are connected to the land, that to fund people that are trying to build something important. Science, agriculture, things that really matter and put our money into that. Other things, yes, we need to go to the movies too. We need to do other things. But at the core of it is to make sure that we fund the things that matter, right? So, bechol meodecha, with all your might, and of course, might may mean strength of what? So Rashi, already in the 13th century France, reminds us that's what it means. Okay, now it becomes a little more personal. And I want to go a little farther and just tell you that he wants to dwell in the house of God leorech yamim. Before he says he wants to provide goodness and loving kindness all the days of his life. And very good. Do you remember these words also happen in the Haggadah? Remember with Pesach, Passover, we get these things, this exact wording, Kol Yemei Chayai. And the rabbis are puzzled by this. Why are they puzzled? Because are not the days of my life all the days of my life? How can it be half of the days of my life? I'm saying that I want to do goodness and kindness. Why is this all the days of my life? Any thoughts? So they say, okay, the days of my life are the days. But kol, all the days of my life, it also means the nights. It also means when I'm happy, when it's bright and sunny and days, but also when it rains, and also when it pours in my life. I also want to do goodness and loving kindness. Because many times what happens to us, when we get into the mitzvot, into the commandments, people say, why do they call it an obligation? Wouldn't it be better to call it, what do you think we will call mitzvot? Acts of loving kindness, one could think, right? But what if I don't feel like it? What if this poor woman is on the street lying down because she just fell because she was sick, and I don't feel like doing it? I don't feel like calling 911. I don't feel like helping her. Is that all right?
No, it's an obligation.
So that is why mitzvah is an obligation, because it's not up to me. I'm an instrument of God in this world. And for that, I have to ask the question that we beg to ask. What does God want from me? What does God want from me? And then it comes from this place. You know the word avodah? Avodah means, in Hebrew today, it means work. But avodah in biblical Hebrew means also slavery. And then to be Eved Adonai means to be God's servant. In fact, the one that Moses is called God's servant. It's the same word, exactly the same word. So how do you know when one is a slave and one is God's servant? So here comes Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, Rabbi Judah Halevi from 12th century Spain. He was a philosopher, a doctor. He went all the way from Spain to the land of Israel, to the promised land. And he says, Avdei Hazman, those that pursue time, Avadim Hem. Those that are running constantly for time, chronos, they say in Greek, right? They are slaves. Avdei Adonai. those that are God's servants, only they, rak hem chofshim, only they are free, truly free. Yes, like they have the capacity of making the house of God anywhere they are, whether they are inside of their homes, where they are at the gym, where they are at the synagogue, where are at the supermarket. They can create moments of sacredness. As we are going into this, I'm going to now show you. Let me stop the share and see if I need to do this again, just to make sure that, let me see, share sound. If the sound is good. Okay, so I'm gonna give you this, and then I'm going to give you a different version in English of Psalm 23. And I want you to listen very carefully because I'm going to ask you a question after that. All right? So here comes, this is a version by a famous jazz composer. His name is Bobby McFerrin. And here is what he wrote. What do you think? It's what we call a midrash, a little bit of an explanation of he thinks that this is, but before anything else, what really shocked you?
He used the word she instead of he.
Exactly. Why is he thinking of that? Because there is a whole thing in Judaism, of course, that God is many, many things, and including the so-called Shekhinah, this idea of an embracing power, And this embracing power is feminine. And many times I love to say this because we all fall, as clergy especially, with this idea that God is only in the masculine. And in truth, the Bible always calls God in the masculine. But we know that there are other views of this. And I wanted you to know that there is some in his case. I mean, you heard the sense of embracing that he's providing with his particular musical setting is actually a sign of love, a sign of compassion, a sign of great kindness. And I have to say, just to be fair to you, that he actually dedicated this to his mother. This musical setting to his mother. Anyway, I wanted to conclude with two pieces that have nothing to do with this, but that I thought it would be important for us to do at this moment. I'm going to share this with you. Let's see. There you go. View. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Zoom and make it a little bit bigger. Let's see if 200% does it. All right. So this it says, I'll say it in Hebrew first. El male rachamim shochen bamromin dayan almanot ve'avi yetomim aמצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה ומעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מאירים ומזהירים לנשמות תושבי מדינת ישראל גברים ונשים זקנים וטף שנהרגו שנשחטו שנטבחו ללא רחם על ידי חיות אדם בשדרות, אופקים, נתיבות, יער רעים, בארי, נתיב העשרה, חולית, ניר עוז, ובשאר יישובי עוטף עזה, בעבור שאנו מתפללים לעילוי נשמותיהם, לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם, בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם, אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבותם, ונאמר אמן. Exalted, merciful God, who upholds the widows and embraces the orphans, grant perfect rest under the wings of your Shekhinah, of your presence, in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose lights forever lights up the skies to the souls of the residents of the state of Israel, men and women, young and old, who were killed, slaughtered, and ruthlessly massacred by cold-blooded terrorists in Sderot, Ofakim, Netivot, Yar Re'im, Be'eri, Netiv HaAsara, Cholit, Nir Oz, and other communities on the Gaza border. O Master of mercy, let their souls ascend and cradle them eternally under your wings. The Eternal One is their legacy, and may they find everlasting peace. Amen.
Amen.
Yes, so this is the time. It's very interesting. Last Shabbat, Israel commemorated 4 Shabbatot since the time where the war began, that terrible October 7th. It's more than a month, so we just had the so-called Shloshim, the 30 days for those that are not in this world any longer. I thought that it was important for us to connect ourselves to that. I hope as many of you that can come on Tuesday to DC, it would be an important demonstration to show that we really care for life, that we care for people that have been captive for too long, children, old human beings, some of them survivors of the Shoah, of the Holocaust, men and women, of course, precious people that are still 243 now, that have been held captive in tunnels in Gaza. May they return. May bring them home. Return. Bimera b'yameinu, speedily in our days. Shabbat shalom to all of you. I will hopefully, with the help of God, see you next week for our final psalm. The psalm's going to be Psalm 126. If you want to look at it in advance, this is the psalm that we recite as an introduction to the Birkat Hamazon, to the prayer that we recite after the meals. I hope you can come and join me. Until then, have Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov, have a pleasant and meaningful week. And may we come back, as my father, may he rest in peace, would say, only in happiness. Rak bismachot, only in happiness. Until then, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much, every one of you.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom,
Thank you.
Cantor.
Wow. Thank
Shabbat
you.
shalom. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Best of luck.
Happy Veterans Day for any of you tomorrow.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. That's absolutely
Yeah.
right. Yes. Okay.
Thanks for the holiday. All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.